You're watching All 24 Nightly News with me, Mariam Zian. To the headlines. After US President Donald Trump announced the Zionist entity's approval of a 60-day truce in Gaza, Hamas says it is acting with a high sense of responsibility and holding consultations to discuss the mediators' proposals. Meanwhile, dozens of Palestinians have been killed in brutal massacres carried out by the occupation in the Gaza Strip. Also coming up, Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune receives a message from his Venezuelan counterpart Nicolas Maduro. Both sides praised efforts to strengthen and advance bilateral relations, reaffirming their commitment to boosting cooperation. In Morocco, mounting criticism over the deteriorating human rights situation. Organizations and advocacy groups warn of the dangers posed by proposed amendments to the criminal procedure law and condemn the increasing restrictions on their activities. Hello and welcome back to the news. First, in our file, the Islamic resistance movement Hamas said the brotherly mediators are making intensive efforts to bridge the gap between the parties and reach a framework agreement that would lead to a serious round of negotiations. In a statement, Hamas affirmed that it is acting with a high sense of responsibility and conducted national consultations to discuss the proposals it has received from the mediators in order to reach an agreement that guarantees an end to the aggression, the withdrawal, and the urgent relief of the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. US President Donald Trump said that Israel has agreed to the necessary conditions to implement a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza, during which efforts will be made to end the war. Trump revealed in a social media post that his representatives held a lengthy meeting with Zionist occupation leaders regarding Gaza, adding that the Qataris, who have worked hard to bring about peace, will present this final proposal. The US president expressed hope that the Hamas movement would accept the deal. On Wednesday, Al-Quds Brigade's the military wing of the Islamic Jihad movement released video footage showing its fighters targeting gatherings of Zionist occupation forces with mortar shells in the city of Khan Yunis, in southern Gaza, where those forces have been operating. The number of martyrs due to Zionist occupation airstrikes on various parts of the Gaza Strip has risen to 67, with dozens more injured since dawn on Wednesday. Medical sources reported that Zionist warplanes carried out a series of air raids and their forces committed brutal massacres in several areas across the Strip. The number of victims of the ongoing Zionist aggression on the Gaza Strip since October 7, 2023 has reached 57,012 martyrs, while the number of injured has risen to 134,592, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza. 142 martyrs and 487 injured, were received by the hospitals in the past 24 hours. An additional 223 martyrs were added to the death toll after their information was verified and approved by the Judicial Committee responsible for tracking notifications and missing persons. The government media office in Gaza stated Wednesday morning that Zionist occupation forces and a U.S. security company have been directly firing on Palestinians seeking aid. The statement revealed that this direct gunfire against starving civilians led to the martyrdom of more than 580 people, injury of over 4,200 others, and 39 missing persons. It added that the concentration of aid distribution in southern Gaza is forcing civilians into displacement. The office called for an urgent international investigation into these serious violations against aid seekers and urged a halt to cooperation with the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Gazans continue to endure deadly mass shootings by Zionist forces at aid distribution points operated by the U.S. and Zionist-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Civilians are being killed daily as the crippling blockade remains in place across the Gaza Strip. Usama Ayadi has the report.
Over the past 2 months, hundreds of starving Palestinians seeking food have been killed and thousands more wounded at aid sites run by the U.S.-Israel-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. The foundation's controversial aid operations launched in Gaza on May 27th have drawn intense global condemnation and legal scrutiny. Marketed by the U.S. and the Zionist occupation as aid distribution centers, critics say the sites have become death traps where starving Palestinians waiting for food have been systematically shot by the Zionist forces. Children, women, and even entire families have been wiped out from civil registers, and the reason is seeking food. UN officials describe the situation as one where Palestinians who have no choice but to risk their lives to basically survive, but they're instead getting a bullet to their head, which becomes a spoil of the competition among Zionist soldiers who brag about who killed the highest number of innocent Palestinians.
Our hospitals are receiving mass casualties, and they're already overwhelmed and running extremely low on supplies, because a very small trickle of aid is only being allowed in currently.
The Zionist entity has kept Gaza's crossings largely closed to food, medical supplies, fuel, and humanitarian assistance during most of its ongoing genocidal war in the enclave. Even the collapsed health care centers are suffering a fatal shortage of fuel, which is considered a vital need to the continuation of the basic medical care.
More than 350 kidney patients are now suffering because we can't perform dialysis for them. We've kept the limited amount of fuel needed for the hospital's intensive care unit and operations department because the intensive care unit cannot function without electricity for even a single minute.
With hundreds of thousands facing famine and starvation, critics see the inhumane Gaza Humanitarian Foundation aid distribution process as reminiscent of concentration camps where civilians endure hours-long waits behind metal fences under the scorching sun. No need for analysis, nor for biased international organizations to prove that the occupation is using food as a weapon of mass killing, turning what it claims to be aid into a tool of extermination and domination.
And still within the context of the Palestinian file, on Wednesday morning, armed settlers attacked Palestinian homes in the village of Susia in Masafer Yatta, south of Al-Khalil, in the occupied West Bank. According to the Palestinian news agency Siren, Jihad Nawajah, head of the Susia Village Council, a group of armed settlers has been besieging the village for several days and pelted Palestinian homes with stones for the second day in a row. He said residents are living under constant threat and many have been forced to abandon work to remain in the village and protect their families and properties. And the Houthi group announced the implementation of a military operation targeting Lod airport with Palestine-2 hypersonic ballistic missile. A video statement issued by the group's military spokesman Yahya Sariyah said that 3 other drone attacks targeted several locations in the occupied territories. He added that these attacks are a response to the genocide being perpetrated by the occupied or by the occupation against the people of the Gaza Strip.
نفذت القوة الصاروخية في القوات المسلحة اليمنية.
The Yemeni missile forces carried out a qualitative military operation targeting Lod Airport in the occupied Jaffa region with a Palestine II hypersonic ballistic missile. The operation successfully achieved its goal, thanks be to God.
ونفذ سلاح الجو المسير.
The Yemeni drone forces carried out 3 military operations targeting 3 sensitive targets belonging to the Israeli enemy in the Jaffa, Ashkelon and Rash regions in occupied Palestine with 3 drones.
In Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune received Julio Cesar Leon Heredia, Venezuela's Minister of People's Power for Productive Agriculture and Lands. A statement from the Algerian presidency said President Tebboune received a message from Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro during the meeting. The meeting was also attended by Presidential Chief of Staff Boualam, Diplomatic Affairs Advisor Ammar Bilani, Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development and Fisheries Youssef Sharfa, and Algerian Ambassador to Venezuela Farouk bin Mukhtar. And after the meeting, the Venezuelan minister praised the strong relations between Algeria and Venezuela and affirmed the two countries' determination to fulfill the aspirations of their peoples.
In the name of the President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, Mr. Nicolas Maduro, and the Venezuelan people, we would like to extend our sincere thanks to the President of the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria and the entire government for the activities we are currently undertaking to strengthen relations between the two countries, which ultimately aim to achieve prosperity and progress between the peoples of Algeria and Venezuela.
Secretary of State to the Algerian Foreign Minister Selma Bakhta Mansouri met with Venezuelan Deputy Foreign Minister for African Affairs Yuri Alexander Pimentel Mora to discuss friendship and cooperation ties between the two nations. The Algerian Foreign Ministry statement said they exchanged views on ways to enhance bilateral coordination on regional and international issues, particularly those related to Africa. The meeting was held on the sidelines of the 5th session of the Algeria-Venezuela Joint Governmental Committee on Economic, Commercial, Scientific, Technical and Cultural Cooperation, held in Algiers on July 2nd and 3rd. The Algerian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, held a phone call with his Polish counterpart, Radosław Sikorski, reviewing the various dimensions of friendly and cooperative ties between Algeria and Poland. According to a foreign ministry statement, the two discussed ways to boost momentum in bilateral relations ahead of Sikorski's upcoming visit to Algeria in the second half of this year. They also exchanged views on several regional international issues with particular focus on the situation in the Sahel-Sahara region. Algeria and Turkey reaffirmed the need to intensify joint efforts to achieve the goals set by Presidents Abdelmajid Tebboune and Recep Tayyip Erdogan ahead of the upcoming high-level Strategic Cooperation Council meeting. A foreign ministry statement said that Minister Ahmed Attaf and Turkish Deputy Foreign Minister Burhan Etin Duran reviewed the outcomes of the second round of political consultations co-chaired by Duran and Algerian Foreign Ministry Secretary General Younes Magraman. The talks praised major achievements in strengthening Algerian-Turkish partnership, especially in the economic field, and addressed regional and international issues of mutual interest, particularly developments in Palestine and the situations in the Gulf and Sahel regions. Algerian Foreign Ministry Secretary General Younes Magraman and Turkish Deputy Foreign Minister Burhanettin Duran discussed ways to enhance investment and technical cooperation in various fields. During the co-chaired session of the second Algerian-Turkish political consultations, both sides reviewed the state of bilateral partnership, especially in political and economic spheres, and praised the deep historical ties between Algeria and Turkey. Algerian Foreign Ministry Secretary General Younes Maghraman and Turkish Deputy Foreign Minister Burhanettin Duran also exchanged views and analyses on a range of regional and international issues of mutual concern. According to a statement from the Algerian Foreign Ministry, both sides affirmed their shared perspectives on developments unfolding in various regions, particularly the situation in occupied Palestine, the Middle East, Western Sahara, and the Sahel-Sahara region. And Moroccan organizations have denounced what they described as the ongoing deterioration of human rights in the kingdom, warning that it is fueling public frustration amid persistent corruption and lack of accountability. They called for a broad political and human rights breakthrough to restore trust and protect the dignity of the Moroccan people.
Setbacks in rights and freedoms are no longer isolated incidents. They now reflect a clear pattern aimed at undoing hard-won gains, achieved through years of struggle. The silencing of free voices, legitimization of impunity, and granting of impunity to certain groups only fuel public frustration. We call for the immediate release of lawyer Mohamed Ziyan, imprisoned for over 2 years, and the Rif Iraq detainees, who face excessively harsh sentences. We also urge an end to judicial restrictions targeting opponents of normalization and defenders of the Palestinian cause. We demand a broad political and human rights breakthrough that restores trust, upholds human dignity, and builds democratic society for all.
The Moroccan Space for Human Rights, for its part, warned of the dangers posed by the controversial amendments in the draft criminal procedure law, which would limit civil society's right to report corruption crimes involving those implicated in the embezzlement of public funds. Let's take a listen.
We warn of the serious risks posed by the controversial amendments in the draft criminal procedure law, which seek to restrict civil society's right to report corruption, particularly when high-level embezzlement of public funds is involved. These changes would grant certain officials a form of judicial impunity, threatening the principles of equality before the law and accountability. Rather than advancing justice and fighting corruption, the proposed law risks becoming a shield for the corrupt, offering them greater protection and privileges at the expense of the public interest.
Moving on to Ukraine, lawmaker from the ruling Servant of the People Party and a member of Parliament's Defense Committee told reporters in Kiev that the Pentagon's decision to halt some arms shipments to Ukraine, including air defense missiles, is painful for Kiev's effort to defend against Russian airstrikes. Fedir Venislavsky labeled the decision as certainly very unpleasant, adding that it's painful and against the background of what he called terrorist attacks which Russia commits against Ukraine.
This decision is certainly very unpleasant for us. It's painful and against the background of the terrorist attacks which Russia commits against Ukraine, against peaceful towns, cities, villages, citizens of Ukraine that die almost every day from such terrorist attacks. It's a very unpleasant situation.
The Kremlin welcomed on Wednesday news that the U.S. has halted some weapons deliveries to Ukraine, saying that the fewer arms are shipped to Kiev, the sooner the conflict will end. The Pentagon has halted some shipments of air defense missiles and other precision munitions to Ukraine over concerns that U.S. stockpiles are too low.
As far as we understand, the reason for this decision was empty stockpiles, a shortage of these weapons in storage. In any case, the less weaponry is supplied to Ukraine, the closer the end of the special military operation.
And the Russian Defense Ministry announced strikes on facilities belonging to Ukraine's military-industrial complex and said its forces continue to advance deep into Ukrainian defenses on multiple fronts, taking control of several areas in Donetsk. According to the ministry statement, Russian forces destroyed drone assembly workshops, storage sites, and ammunition depots. It added that units from the Eastern Group of Forces advanced further into Ukrainian positions and targeted military personnel and equipment in various areas of Donetsk. And Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Alexander Grushko warned of the dangers posed by the European Union forming a military alliance similar to NATO. Grushko said in press remarks that any new military structure would pose a direct threat to Moscow and would require an appropriate response. He also criticized NATO's role in transforming the Baltic region, which he described as one of the calmest, into an open military confrontation zone. And Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam said on Wednesday that stability cannot be achieved in Lebanon as long as the Zionist entity continues its violations and occupation of parts of Lebanese territory. Speaking at a special meeting in Beirut, Salam said Lebanon is stepping up political and diplomatic pressure to enforce UN Resolution 1701 and that the state continues to assert full sovereignty over its territory and monopolize the use of arms, stressing that it has enhanced control over Beirut International Airport and its access roads through strict administrative and security measures to curb smuggling and enhance public safety. And Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has ratified a law suspending cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency following a 12-day war, during which the Zionist entity and the U.S. carried out strikes on Ukrainian or Iranian nuclear facilities. Iran's Tasnim news agency confirmed on Wednesday that lawmakers had voted in favor of the bill a few days earlier, with 221 out of 290 parliamentarians supporting the measure, according to the Iranian state television. The United Nations welcomed the partial lifting of economic sanctions imposed by the United States on Syria. UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric emphasized the importance of ensuring the full benefit of all sanction relief measures and the provision of financial support and resources in parallel. UN Special Envoy to Syria Geir Patterson described the U.S. move as an important step toward recovery, stability, and building a better future. He stressed the need to give the Syrian people a genuine opportunity to rebuild their country. And more international news with Hosam Barkan.
Which were charged and which had done.
Protesters gathered outside Downing Street on Wednesday to oppose the proposed ban on Palestine action. MPs voted to label the group a terrorist organization. The protest, organized by Palestinian Solidarity Campaign, was dispersed by police at 8 p.m. The decision now moves to the House of Lords. Fans braved extreme heat on Wednesday as Switzerland faced Norway in the Women's Euro 2025 opener. UEFA says over 600,000 tickets have been sold, breaking records. To help fans cope, water bottles were allowed into stadiums. Basel hit 35 degrees, with similar heat across the country. Two people died in wildfire in Catalonia on Tuesday. The blaze, worsened by storms and strong winds, destroyed farmland across 40 kilometers. Authorities warn more storms are expected as the region battles a severe heat wave. Tropical storm Barry hit central Mexico, flooding towns and damaging hundreds of homes in San Luis Potosí. Residents are clearing debris, but no fatalities were reported. Officials say the damage was worse than expected.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap for tonight's program. Thanks for watching and have a great night.